GPS said 45 minutes to Millbrook, but I turned it off somewhere past Bury and let muscle memory take over. The highway signs were familiar in a way that felt like a warning. I hadn't driven this stretch in 3 years, and the lake kept appearing between the trees on my left, gray and flat under the March sky, like it had been waiting. I wasn't nervous. That's what I told myself. I was just cold, because the heat in my car had been acting up since February and I hadn't gotten around to fixing it. My stepmother had called the week before, not me. She'd called my father's phone and he put it on speaker without warning, the way he always did when he didn't want to be the one to ask something. She said the town was holding a recognition dinner for local veterans and community leaders at the Millbrook Community Center, and that my father was being acknowledged for his 30 years with the Legion. She said it would mean a lot to him if I came. She didn't say it would mean a lot to her. She never did. That was the point. I said I'd come. I almost didn't. My name is Heather. I'm 31 years old. I grew up in Millbrook, Ontario, which is the kind of small town where everyone knows which family you belong to and forms their opinions accordingly. My mother died when I was 9. My father remarried 4 years later. His wife? I'll call her my stepmother because that's what she is. Legally and technically, though the word has always felt too generous, her name is Arlene. Arlene is not a villain from a story. She's something more ordinary than that, which is somehow worse. She's a woman who decided early on that I was a problem she hadn't agreed to take on, and she managed that problem the way certain people manage things they don't want to deal with directly, quietly, consistently, and always just below the level where anyone would believe you if you named it. She never hit me. She never screamed. She smiled at parent-teacher nights and brought casseroles to the church fundraisers and asked about my school projects in a tone that suggested she found them slightly exhausting. When I got into the University of Toronto at 17, first in my family, she said, at dinner, in front of my father, "I just hope you know what you're signing up for. It's a long way from home." My father nodded. He said, "She'll figure it out." I figured it out. I didn't come home much after that, and when I did, Arlene had a way of filling the house with a version of me that wasn't quite real, a version that was struggling, or difficult, or distant. She never lied outright. She just curated. She mentioned the right things to the right people. She let silences do the work. By the time I finished my undergraduate degree, most of Millbrook's small core of people who remembered my mother had the impression that I'd gone to the city and become someone hard to reach, that I'd changed, that I'd gotten above myself. I hadn't. I'd just gotten busy. There's a difference. But small towns don't always have room for that distinction. I pulled into the community center parking lot at 5:45. The building was a flat-roofed civic thing from the 70s, freshly repainted with a banner over the entrance reading, "Recognizing Our Own. Millbrook Legion Appreciation Night." There were maybe 60 cars in the lot. For Millbrook, that was a crowd. I sat in the car for a moment. I was wearing a dark blazer and a white shirt, my hair pulled back. I thought carefully about what to wear, which was its own kind of embarrassing. You don't think about your clothes this much unless you're expecting to be looked at. Inside, the community center smelled the way it always had, floor wax and drip coffee and the faint ghost of 1,000 potluck dinners. Round tables with white tablecloths, a podium at the front with a small Canadian flag on either side, a table near the door with name tags and a sign-in sheet. I found my name printed neatly. Heather Caldwell, guest, and stuck it to my lapel. My father saw me from across the room. He lifted his hand. He looked older. He always looked older than I expected, and it always caught me off guard, the way aging does when you only see someone in intervals. He was wearing his Legion jacket with the pins along the front, and he looked proud in a way that was purely his own, not performed, not for anyone else. Just a man who'd given a lot of years to something and was glad to be recognized for it. I went to him. He shook my hand, which was something we had settled into without ever discussing it, the handshake instead of the hug. His grip was firm and brief. "You came," he said. "Of course," I said. Arlene materialized at his elbow the way she always did, appearing rather than arriving. She was in a burgundy dress, her silver hair set, and she looked at me with an expression I recognized, the bright, careful smile of someone performing warmth for an audience of one. "Heather," she said, "I wasn't sure you'd make it. I know how busy things get." "Not too busy," I said. "No, of course not." She touched my father's arm. "She made it, Tom," like she was reporting something mildly surprising to him, like I was a weather event. I got a glass of water from the service table and found a seat near the edge of the room, close enough to my father's table to be visible, far enough that I didn't have to make conversation through the salad course. I knew a few faces. The Hendersons from 2 streets over, old Mr. Patnode from the Legion, who had once taught me to play cribbage in the back room and had the kind of handshake that lasted 45 seconds. A woman from my mother's old church circle whose name I could not retrieve, who looked at my name tag and then at my face and gave me a nod that contained several years of local history. I ate the rolls. I drank the coffee when they brought it around. I kept my face neutral and my posture easy, and I thought about the drive back to Toronto and whether I'd stop in Barrie or just push straight through. It was during the salad course that I first heard it. I wasn't meant to. 2 women at the next table, leaning toward each other with the body language of people sharing something they've been holding for a while. One of them I recognized vaguely, a friend of Arlene's from the choir, I thought. The other I didn't know. "Left her job," the first one said. "From what Arlene says, it didn't work out. The government job, whatever it was, she doesn't really talk about it. Arlene says she's been, at loose ends." I kept my eyes on the bread roll I was tearing apart. My hands were very still. The second woman made a sound that wasn't quite agreement and wasn't quite sympathy. "Pity. Tom must worry." "Oh, he does. You can tell." I set down the bread roll. I looked at my water glass. I thought about my mother, who had grown up 3 blocks from this community center, and who had known everyone in this room and who would have said, if she were sitting beside me, "Don't give it to them, Heather. Don't give them a thing." So I didn't. I didn't turn around. I didn't correct the record. I picked up my fork and I ate my salad and I let the conversation wash past me and away. Arlene found me near the coffee urns during the break before the main program. She came alone, which meant she'd chosen her moment. "Are you all right?" she said. "You seem quiet." "I'm always quiet," I said. "You look tired." She tilted her head. "Are you sleeping?" "I worry. Living alone in the city, it's a lot. I sleep fine. I'm sure you do." She poured herself a coffee unhurried. "Your father's so happy you came, even if things haven't." She paused, arranging her face into something careful. "Even if things are still sorting themselves out for you, it means a lot to him." I looked at her. She met my eyes with the composed, gentle expression of someone who has never said anything wrong in their life. "Things are fine, Arlene," I said. "Of course they are," she said, and smiled, and walked back to her table. I stood there with my coffee for a moment. The room had that post-meal low hum, people relaxed and charitable with each other, and I was acutely aware that I was standing in the middle of it alone, while my stepmother had just, in the space of 4 sentences, told this entire gathering that I was a woman whose life wasn't working out. I went back to my seat. The program started at 7:30. The Legion president, a tall man named Ed, who I didn't recognize, gave a short speech about community and service that was genuinely good, the kind of speech that doesn't oversell anything. There were 6 people being recognized. My father was 4th on the list. When they called his name and read out his 30 years of volunteer service, his work with veteran outreach programs, his decade on the Legion's provincial council, he stood and nodded and sat back down, and I saw his jaw work once, the way it did when he was trying not to show that something meant something. I clapped hard. I thought, whatever else, he earned this. The dinner wound down slowly, the way these things do in small towns, people lingering because the drive home is not long and there's nowhere else to be. I was thinking about getting my coat when the chair beside me was pulled out. I looked up. The man who sat down was in his late 50s, with the kind of erect posture that doesn't leave you even after you've hung up the uniform. He was in civilian clothes, a dark suit, no tie, but there was something about how he occupied space that was immediately different from everyone else in the room, like he was used to rooms paying attention to him without him asking. He looked at my name tag, then at me. "Heather Caldwell," he said. "Tom's daughter?" "That's right," I said. He nodded. Good man, your father. Known him through the provincial council for years. He extended his hand. Gordon Ashworth. We shook. He had the kind of handshake where you can tell the person has spent decades in rooms where first impressions are everything, and they've stopped thinking about it. Were you in the service? He asked. There was a pause, not a long one, but a real one. Yes, I said. It was enough. Something shifted in his face. Not dramatically. Just a small recalibration, the way people who've been around the military long enough can hear a whole sentence in a single yes. What branch? He asked. Canadian Armed Forces, I said. I was with the JAG, Judge Advocate General, legal officer. What rank did you leave at? I had not planned to have this conversation. I had, in fact, spent the last 4 hours trying to not have any version of it. But Gordon Ashworth asked the question with the directness of someone who considered evasion a waste of both people's time, and I was tired, and in the end, the answer was just the truth. Lieutenant Colonel, I said. He sat back very slightly, the kind of movement that looks like nothing but means he was recalibrating again. How long? 12 years. I left last spring. I'm with a firm in Toronto now. Defense and military law. Which firm? I told him. He was quiet for a moment, looking at me with an expression I could not entirely read. Then he said, I know that firm. Good work. He paused. I was CAF myself. Retired. Brigadier General. The table to our left had gone quiet in that particular way. People go quiet when they're listening without looking like they're listening. I said, Congratulations on the retirement. It's boring, he said frankly. And I laughed, a real one, and he smiled. Arlene appeared at the edge of my peripheral vision. She had come from her table with the smooth purposefulness of a woman who has seen something she needs to understand. And she arrived beside us with a smile already arranged on her face. I see you've met Heather, she said to Gordon, putting one hand briefly on his shoulder like she was claiming some small piece of the conversation. She's Tom's daughter. She was in the military, actually. For a bit. Before things... She paused with the delicacy of someone letting an implication settle. She's figuring out her next steps. Gordon looked at her. Then he looked at me. Your stepmother, he said. Yes, I said. I see. He turned back to Arlene with the patient courtesy of a man who has sat through a great many briefings and knows exactly when someone is talking without knowing what they're talking about. Heather was just telling me about her work, he said. 12 years as a JAG officer. Lieutenant Colonel. She's practicing military defense law now at one of the best firms in the country. He paused. Figuring out her next steps seems like a generous way to put it. Arlene's smile did not disappear. It just became very fixed. Oh, she said, I must have misunderstood. Easy to do, Gordon said pleasantly. She excused herself. I watched her go. Gordon looked at his coffee cup. Small towns, he said. Yeah, I said. You should know, he said, not looking up, that your father talks about you. At the provincial council meetings, he talks about your work, your cases. He's proud. He glanced at me. I just thought you should know that. Sometimes it doesn't get said. The room was loud around us, and I was very still inside of it. Thank you, I said. My voice came out even, which I was glad for. He nodded. He stood the way men do when they've said the thing they came to say. He looked around the room and then back at me. Good luck with the firm, he said. Enjoy the retirement, I said. He smiled and moved away, and I sat for a moment with my hands around my coffee cup, which had gone cold. My father found me near the coat rack 20 minutes later. The room was thinning out, people gathering jackets and scarves and saying the long goodbyes that small towns specialize in. He helped me pull my coat from the hook, which was something he used to do when I was small and had apparently never quite stopped doing. You met Gordon Ashworth, he said. I did. Good man. He straightened the collar of his Legion jacket. He mentioned you at the last council meeting. Before tonight, I mean. He'd read about one of your cases. I looked at him. You never said that. He was quiet for a moment. He's a man of the kind of silences that are full rather than empty, and I've learned to wait them out. I should have, he said. I should have said it more. The parking lot was cold. The March air off the lake had teeth in it, and the sky had gone that deep blue-black that means real dark, countryside dark. Nothing like the ambient orange of the city at night. We stood by my car for a moment, the two of us, which was something we had not done since I couldn't remember when. "It's a long drive back," he said. "Not bad. Maybe 4 hours if I don't stop." He nodded. He looked at the community center, lights still warm behind the windows. "She means well," he said. "Arlene. I know she's." He stopped. Started again. "I know it's not always easy." I let him find the rest of it. He didn't. Maybe he couldn't, not yet. But he was standing there in the cold trying, which was something. "It's okay, Dad," I said. And I meant it in the complicated way that okay can mean, which is not quite the same as fine, but is not quite the same as not okay either. It's the word you use when something is still being sorted. He shook my hand again, both of us wrapped around mine this time, and held it for a second longer than usual. I drove out of Millbrook at 9:15. The highway was empty, and the radio found a CB station playing something quiet and instrumental, and I left it there. The lake appeared once more between the trees, catching the moonlight, and then it was gone. I wasn't thinking about Arlene. I wasn't thinking about Gordon Ashworth or the women at the table next to me or the word misunderstood said in that perfectly calibrated tone. I was thinking about my father's face when they read his name at the podium, the way his jaw worked, the 30 years he'd given, and the genuine dignity of being seen for it in a room full of people who knew what service meant. And I was thinking about what Gordon had said, that my father talked about me at those meetings, that he was proud. He never told me, but he told them. There's a kind of love that doesn't know how to travel the distance between two people. It just circles and circles, looking for a way in. I'd been angry at that for a long time. I still was, a little. But somewhere on the highway past Barrie, in the dark and the quiet, I decided that knowing was enough. For tonight, knowing was enough. I thought a lot about that drive home. The highway dark, the radio low, the lake gone behind the tree line somewhere past Barrie, and what I keep coming back to isn't the moment Gordon Ashworth named my rank in front of Arlene. It isn't her face going still or the table beside us going quiet. It's the 12 years before that, the ones that made the moment possible. I didn't stay silent at that dinner because I was afraid. I stayed silent because I had learned, slowly, over a long time and in hard rooms, that dignity doesn't need a microphone. That's not something you're taught directly. It's something you figure out by watching what happens when you do the opposite. When you defend yourself to people who've already decided what you are, you give them exactly what they wanted, proof that you're rattled, that their version of you has weight. I learned to take that weight away by not picking it up. That's what I mean when I think about character. Not the word in the abstract, but the actual daily practice of it. Choosing not to correct Arlene's friends during the salad course. Choosing not to flinch when she said, figuring out her next steps in that careful, sad tone. Character isn't about being passive. It was 12 years of work that made silence the right choice, not weakness. You can only afford quiet confidence when you've actually built something underneath it. And that's the part that doesn't show in a single room on a single evening. Gordon Ashworth didn't shake my hand because I was in that community center. He shook it because of what happened in the years I wasn't. The briefs filed, the cases argued, the early mornings, and the decisions made under pressure when no one was watching and there was no recognition coming. The work was the thing. The evening was just when the work became visible to the people who'd missed it. I think about my father saying I should have said it more. He knew. He'd always known. He just hadn't found the bridge between what he understood and what I needed to hear. There's something in that worth sitting with. The way people who love us can carry pride like a private thing, turning it over in their hands for years, not realizing we're on the other side of a wall we can't see. It doesn't make the silence right, but understanding it is different from excusing it. And I'm old enough now to hold both at once. What Arlene underestimated, what that kind of person always underestimates, is that a quiet person isn't an empty one. It takes real intelligence to read a room well enough to know when speaking costs more than it returns. It takes real steadiness to sit with someone else's false version of you and not reach for it. Those aren't passive qualities. They're built, deliberately, over time, from the same material as everything else worth having. I don't know what Arlene believed when she left that parking lot. Maybe she told herself it was a misunderstanding, which is the refuge of people who are never quite wrong about anything. That's fine. It's not something I need to resolve. What I have is the road home and my father's handshake and the knowledge that somewhere in a room full of veterans and coffee and folding chairs, the truth turned up on its own, the way it tends to, eventually, for people who've been patient enough to let it.